Good. Good morning, everyone. Really good. Have a little conversation. Really good to see you. If you don't know me, my name is Hanel. I lead the church with Ben. I've noticed a few new people. You are really welcome here today. We have a newcomers lunch next Sunday after church. If you'd just like to find out more, we'd love to see you over at the vicarage straight after church. Sign up online. Good. So this morning we are on our final value that we've been exploring over the last however many weeks. So we've been looking at all our values here. We've been talking a lot about vision, that we want to play our part in bringing heaven to South East London, and there are ways that we're doing that. Do I have a slide of the values? I don't know if it's there, but no, it's not. It is. There we go. How do we do that? We be with Jesus, become like Jesus, do what Jesus did, help one another do the same. That's our mission statement. And then next slide. Our 5 values, core values. So we value a lot here, but it's good to talk about our 5 core ones just so we really know what's going on. We want a church that feels like family, a church that is empowered by the Spirit, a church that makes Jesus known, a church that's ambitiously local, and a church that is every day, not an event. And that is the value I'm going to be talking about this morning. Every day, not an event. Following Jesus happens Monday to Saturday. And on Sunday, we just get to join in and celebrate with all God is doing and be equipped for the week ahead. Now, some of you may feel that over the last couple of weeks, the value Ben explored last week and the one that I'm looking at today, you may get the idea that we're saying, do you know what? If you don't live in Brockley, don't come to St. Peter's, and also don't come on a Sunday because we don't value Sunday. Now, that actually isn't what we are saying. You may be mistaken that we have been saying that, though, because last week Ben spoke about being ambitiously local, about the fact that we want to be a church that goes out into South East London and blesses lots of areas in South East London, planting churches, grafting churches. This is what we sense God is saying to us. And this is vision. The reason we talk about vision is so that we all know where we're heading. But right now, we are here in Brockley, and we wouldn't be able to have that value of being ambitiously local if it wasn't for the fact that we were gathering people from around South East London to Brockley. And because we have you all here, this is why we know that God may be doing something in planting and grafting churches. But right now, you can be here in Brockley, wherever you live in South East London, and enjoy being here, enjoy being filled with the Spirit, enjoy practicing the gifts of the Spirit. But we do want to say that at some point, we may plant or graft churches in other areas of South East London, partnering with other churches, and you may feel called to go to those because you live in that area. But right now, everybody is welcome here, and we're so excited that we get to be together after such a long time of not being together. But also, good for you to know, because today I'm talking about, it's not about Sundays. I absolutely love Sundays. It's good for you to know that. I was really excited about being here today. We love Sundays. Sunday is such an encouraging time. We get to intercede for things that are difficult. We get to share words of prophecy. We get to operate in the gifts of the Spirit. We get to pray for one another. We get amazing worship. We get this corporate feel of community. We get to drink amazing coffee and eat yummy food and be together. I absolutely love Sundays. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's the highlight of my week. I love Sundays. Do you get that? Good. But I definitely know that God requires so much more from us than an hour and a half a week on a Sunday. He requires us to live out our faith Monday to Saturday. And Sunday should just be fun, sharing with one another, mourning with those who mourn, and celebrating with those who are celebrating. Now, why is it good? Well, because it's better for you to live out your faith every day, and it's better for the kingdom. So why is it better for you? Well, one thing we have definitely learned through this pandemic is that when church is taken away, when this Sunday event is taken away, it is not easy. We definitely discovered that. And in that moment, I remember when we realized that we couldn't be in the building on a Sunday, Ben and I and the team were like, how on earth are we going to get people going in their faith? How are we going to help people stay hopeful, help people stay connected to the church? How are we going to do it? Well, the answer was YouTube. Hi, guys. Those of you, is YouTube working? Hello. YouTube was a wonderful way to keep gathering on Sundays. But after that initial buzz of YouTube, and we really enjoyed watching those hits go up on the YouTube channel, didn't we, Ben? And they were going up, and we were like, wow, people are watching, people are coming to church, this is so encouraging. And then we suddenly realized that it was probably just our parents watching over and over again. Or maybe other people's parents. And then we learned this really interesting fact about YouTube, which is that actually it only takes 10 seconds of watching to actually get a hit. So even though we were getting like 300, 400 people watching our service, they were probably only watching for 10 seconds. So that was really encouraging. But also, even though we did use YouTube to gather together on Sundays and encourage one another in faith, there was definitely use in it. I'm not saying it wasn't good. And also, I just want to say, when Ben and I went on doing stuff, we also were just kind of had it on while I was cooking my roast. I got really good at cooking a roast during the lockdown because I could do it during the service. It was really good. Anyone else did that? No, it was just me. You did. Thanks, Liz. So, getting distracted now. So YouTube was a great way of doing that. But as we started to talk to people on our socially distanced walks, as we started to talk to people on the phone, we realized that a lot of people were having a bit of a crisis of faith. In fact, some people lost their faith in this church during the pandemic and have left. It's good for us to recognize that, how hard that's been. For some people, I think they put their faith on hold during the pandemic. They thought, you know what, I'm just going to bunker down, do this thing, and then when we come back in the building, I'll engage with God again. Now, that all sounds like doom and gloom. I know there are some people in this room who have had the most profound experiences of God during the pandemic, have drawn closer to him because it is all you have had. And then for others, we have seen some incredible conversions, people coming to faith because they could watch it on YouTube. So there's been some really good things and some really difficult things. So it's worth noting that. But on a whole, I do think the pandemic has really made Ben and I and many other church leaders ask the question, what on earth are we doing gathering everything around a Sunday event? How are we actually helping people to do their faith Monday to Saturday? What are we actually doing? So it is better for us, but also it's better for the kingdom for us to live out our faith Monday to Saturday. So it's good for us, but it's also good for the kingdom. Why is it better for the kingdom? Well, when God planned to bring heaven to earth through the church, through this body of believers, I don't think he had our Sunday services in mind. I don't think he thought, as Jesus got up to his disciples and he said to them, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me, therefore go pay a couple of people to lead a church, to, make disciples for you, get them to put everything on, get a smoke machine, we don't actually have a smoke machine, get some lights, get a really good worship band, basically, get everybody to come to your event. That is how you were going to make disciples, by getting everyone to come to church on a Sunday. And also, if you want to convert someone and tell people about Jesus, why don't you just bring them to our course, because we can do it for you. Do you think that's really what Jesus was commissioning people to do, to bring people to a Sunday event? Well, I don't think he was. I think if heaven, which is the fullness of the presence of God, is going to come to Southeast London through the church, which I believe that is what the plan is, it's going to take a little bit more commitment and involvement than a couple of hours of us sitting in here on a Sunday. So, what is stopping us making our faith an everyday faith and not just an event? Well, I think it's different for all of us, and I recognize that. We are all in different places. We've all come from different experiences of the church. We've all come from different cultures and different ways of expressing our faith. But I do think there are some common things that make it difficult for people. One of the things is that some of us just don't have time to make faith an everyday thing. For those with children at home, I can really, relate to the drama of getting the children out in the morning, getting them dressed, getting them fed, getting them to school, getting them home again, doing work to get food on the table. So you're working all day, then the children come home, and then there's a lot of other stuff thrown in, like their emotions that you have to deal with, and then you try and put them to bed, and I try to not fall asleep while I'm putting them to bed, and then they're awake, but I'm asleep. It's very strange. And then we go through the whole day all over again, all week, until we get to Saturday, where you can take a little rest, and then we can come to church Sunday. So it fits in nicely, doesn't it, to come to church on a Sunday. So actually living out every day, it feels like there isn't time. For some of us, we compartmentalize our faith. So faith is faith, God is God over here, friends over here, family over here, work over here, and I just slip from one thing into another, and it doesn't all become one thing. It's much easier to have it neatly in boxes, so actually it suits you quite well to have your faith compartmentalized. For some people, living out your faith every day, actually it's quite hard because you don't want to commit to that because you're a bit afraid that God would expect too much from you and that you're not actually good enough to be used by him and to see his love working through you every day, not just on a Sunday. And actually, you're a bit worried that if you did commit and say, do you know what, God, I'm going to give you everything, you may get asked to be a missionary, somewhere like Coventry. For others, I do like Coventry. For others, For others, you are burnt out trying. So there are some of us in here who have been doing this a long old time. You've given your life to Jesus in lots of different forms of ministries, or maybe you've worked for a church, or maybe you've worked for a charity, and you've been really done in, actually, by overdoing it. And so actually you're at a point now where I'll just keep my faith to a Sunday, or to, my village that I attend, or to, the team I serve on. I'll just leave it there, and I won't do it every day, because actually I'm quite exhausted, and I'm a little bit confused why this isn't easy. But here's the problem. Even if we take out the fact that it's better for the kingdom to follow Jesus every day, even if we take out the fact that it's actually obedience to Jesus doing it, the problem is that making God an event in our day, in our everyday, making God the event every day, it's a very personal thing. And Sarah's saying this a bit in her prayers. It's personal. It's a relationship. It's a personal thing to follow Jesus every day, because we are made in his image and likeness. We are made to be in relationship with him. We are made to be with him every day. That is what we are made to do. It's deeply personal. It's how we find joy. It's how we find peace. It's how we function in a healthy way in relationships with other people. It's what we're made to do. So why would we limit that to one day a week? It doesn't really make sense, does it? We're cheating ourselves out of the fullness that God has for us if we don't try to do this every day. So what do we need to do to make this switch? Well, we can learn a lot from the early church. I'm going to just read it again. If I could just have that up again, please, Tom. Acts chapter 2, verse 42. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together, and they had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had a need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes. They ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. So what do we have in this passage? Well, this is a particularly exciting account of what it was like to be a part of the early church 2,000 years ago. In fact, it is so exciting that some people have taken this as some kind of a blueprint for how to do church. So there are definitely some people around the world who think that this is how we're meant to do church, sell everything and camp out on the floor. Well, thankfully, to read the book of Acts in this way would actually be a mistake, because it is actually a book of narrative, which means it is actually an account of historical events that actually took place. Now, obviously, it is part of the Bible, so it is divinely inspired, and it does have a direct bearing on our lives. However, it's important to realize when we're reading a narrative in the Bible that it isn't simply it is simply describing what happened. It's not necessarily dictating what we have to do. Having said that, I do think it's really important for us to discover what it actually looks like to live out our faith every day. And most theologians would agree that this passage, this early church, this description of the early church, has real pattern value, which is showing us that actually we can take some really, really good tips from them as to how to live out our faith every day, right now in the 21st century. So what are the key things that Luke talks to us about? Well, firstly, in verse 42, he says that the early church devoted themselves to the teaching of the apostles. Now, this is, the apostles actually were with Jesus, so the apostles were obviously teaching them from direct events they had, experienced with Jesus, which is really cool because they had the real deal right there. So they devoted themselves to that teaching. They were listening of the stories of what Jesus did, how he died and he was resurrected. But the good news for us is that those stories were written down in the Bible. So we too can learn from the teaching of the apostles. We can learn through the Gospels what Jesus actually did, and we can also learn about the early church in the books after the Gospels. So they're all written down for us. So the early church devoted themselves to the teaching of the apostles. The second thing that Luke tells us in verse 42 is that they devoted themselves to fellowship. So the Greek word for fellowship means to participate in community. Now, this suggests that there were no passive observers in this community. Everyone participated. Everyone was there according to their gifting. They participated in community. The third thing Luke tells us is they devoted themselves to the breaking of bread. What does breaking of bread mean? Well, this could cover the communion, so sharing bread and wine together, remembering the death and resurrection of Jesus. And it can also represent larger fellowship gatherings of sharing a meal together, sharing faith-building stories, building one another up, and also confessing sins and asking God's forgiveness, and then celebrating what God is doing in their lives. The fourth thing Luke says is they devoted themselves to prayer. I love this quote: prayer isn't everything, but everything without prayer is nothing. So if we're not praying, we might as well just be a really good social club. Everything we do is basically done in human effort if we don't pray about it, if we're not talking to God about it. So the early church devoted themselves to prayer, and then they also devoted themselves to worship. Verse 47, they devoted themselves to worship. So in this context, I imagine Luke is talking about sung worship, and often sung worship is basically taken from the Bible, words about God's character, God's goodness, lifting their eyes to him, songs written about Jesus and his sacrifice and his cross. So they worshiped together. The early church worshiped. They devoted themselves to this. So they devoted themselves to the teaching of Jesus, participating in community, eating together, sharing stories of God at work, and remembering Jesus' sacrifice on the cross through confession, prayer, and worship. Right, now you're all looking at me thinking, yes, Hanel, we know about those things. That's what we come to church for. We come to church to pray. We come to church for some community. We come to church to worship. What wonderful worship we had this morning. We come to church to intercede for things and to hear teaching from people. We've got it. And sometimes we get that as well in the week. We do that sometimes in the week as well. We get it. But the challenge that I want us to hear this morning from the early church is that they were devoted to it. And the question is, are we devoted to them? So the ancient Greek word for devoted, I'm going to say this wrong, is proskaterio. So this word devoted means, in this context, here's some translations, to constantly adhere to be steadfastly attentive, to continue all the time, to persevere and not grow faint, to be in constant readiness for. So this word is often used in the context of suffering and trials. It's, like in the persecutions during the Roman authorities, or maybe physical pain. So devoted is being used in that context of difficulty. So they devoted themselves. They constantly adhered to. They paid steadfast attention to. They continued despite everything. They persevered in. They were constantly ready for teaching, praying, coming to the foot of the cross, worship, community, and sharing good news every day. Not just for a couple of hours on a Sunday. Not when they had the time in the business of life. Not when they felt up to it. Not when they'd had a good night's sleep, just when they'd had a good night's sleep. Not when they were feeling just particularly spiritual. Not when it fitted into their schedule. They were continually devoted every day. Now, I know this is challenging. It's challenging for all of us, including me. But the question is, how devoted are we? Are we steadfastly attentive to Jesus? Are we striving to continually adhere to his teaching? Are we in a state of constant readiness? Are we persevering in prayer? Now, I just want to say I appreciate that there are some people here who are completely new to faith, or maybe haven't even decided to follow Jesus. And so I just want you to just enjoy and be here and not feel like I'm talking to you in this. You can be here as you are and enjoy the love of God in this place and enjoy being where you're at. Really, this is me talking to those of us who have already said that Jesus is Lord of our lives and we've given it to him, our lives to him. And even then, I just want to say again, please hear this, the only way we are going to be able to do this, to be devoted to him constantly, without it being religious and without it being this thing that we have to do, like, walking around like, how devoted is he? Not very devoted today. Or comparing ourselves to one another. The only way we're going to be able to do this is through the power of the Holy Spirit. We talk about this a lot, and we've done lots of talks on this, being filled with the Holy Spirit, because Jesus he's done it he's won the battle. He died on the cross and he rose again, and his grace is sufficient for us. So we already have that love and affection through Jesus. We already have that, and so we don't need to worry that this is going to become some kind of a striving competition. But what I am saying is that as we receive more of God's love in moments like this on Sundays, where we open ourselves to the Spirit, understanding who he is, what he's done for us, the only adequate response is pure radical devotion to him Monday to Saturday. So what does this continuous devotion look like every day, and where can we start? Well, it does not look like collapsing our life into church at all. Now, a few years ago, I think we would have said the application for everything would have been, come to church, guys. The application is, go to a village, okay? Serve on a team. Go to the weekly prayer meeting. Go to weekly Bible study. Although all those things are fantastic, by the way, and do go to them. But we would have said that that was the only application to this message, which kind of misses the point. Because the only way we are going to become continuously devoted to Jesus is if we take personal responsibility for our faith, personal ownership for our faith. Now, what does that look like? Well, it's our mission statement. It's being with Jesus, becoming more like him, doing the stuff he did, and helping others do the same. So I'm going to give some examples of that. How can we be with Jesus every day? And we did a whole teaching series on this, so I'm just going to whiz through because time is of the essence. And there was lots of notices today. We did a whole teaching series on being with Jesus, becoming more like him, helping others do the same. We did do it in the middle of a pandemic, which we did wonder whether that was the best timing, but they are all there for us to go back to. So, how can we be with Jesus every day? I'm just going to rattle through this. We can read our Bible. Now, the Bible is the source of all good things. It is our living and breathing reminder of the things that Jesus did. We can meet Jesus in the Bible. We can literally taste him, feel him, experience him, his presence. We can experience God in the Bible. It is amazing how often I open the Bible and I'm feeling weary, I'm really not up for it, and suddenly God speaks to me through the tiniest thing, and I can get on with my day because the truth is all there for us to munch up. What else can we do to be with Jesus? We can worship. There's some really good worship playlists. You can even type in a kind of thing that you feel like I'm grieving at the moment. Is there a playlist for, a worship playlist for grieving? And it's all there on Spotify. There's lots of ways we can worship. We can listen to worship. We can sing worship. We can use the Psalms to worship. There's amazing worshipful Psalms that we can read. And when we worship, we take our eyes off ourselves and we fix our eyes on God. And it says in Hebrews, the writer of Hebrews says that when we worship, we enter the most holy place where the presence of God is powerful and it feels like an anchor to our soul. So sometimes when we are being tossed around by the wind and the waves and the storms, we know that as we worship, he is an anchor to our soul. He is firm and secure. So we can do that. What else can we do to be with Jesus? We can pray. We've spoken a bit about this. Sarah was speaking about this, about our relationship with God. It gives us an opportunity to talk to him because he is there. You can't be in a relationship with a friend if you don't talk to them. Prayer is a great way to draw closer to God, to be with him, and to know that actually perspective comes as we spend time with him. And another thing we can do is we can devote ourselves to doing it in community. So all the being with Jesus stuff is so much easier when we do it together. And I had some great examples of that even this week. I woke up, I had to get out of the house because I was seeing a friend in Guildford, and I didn't spend any time with God in the morning. I was feeling a bit uneasy and I was on the underground, and I came up onto the train and I looked at my phone, and someone in our mum's WhatsApp just shared what her devotional was for the day, and straight away it encouraged me. I was like, oh yes, fix your eyes on Jesus. So that is the point of being in community, is that some of us feel weak and some of us feel strong on a day-to-day basis. But if you're feeling good, please do share it with your brothers and sisters. If God is speaking to you, share it. Doing it in community, being with Jesus in community is so much easier than doing it on our own. I think that was partly the problem with when we were separated from one another, is there wasn't this continual being with one another and encouraging one another. So we don't just do it on our own. It's amazing to hear answered prayers from those in our community, and it builds faith, doesn't it? When someone says, do you know what? God answered my prayer for this, then you're like, oh gosh, I can have faith for my circumstances when we do it in community. So we devote ourselves to being with Jesus through those things, and then we become more like him. So we talk about, as we devote time to being with Jesus, then we can become more like him, because so often we're not, are we? And something I do just want to say is that one of the easiest ways to do this, to become more like Jesus in community, like the early church did, is to talk to one another about stuff that you feel is separating you from God. And this is this idea of confessing our sins, talking about what is not going right, what's separating us. And do you know what you can even do? You can even ask somebody to tell you someone close to you, not someone random, to share with you, what do you think I'm doing in my life right now, which isn't being like Jesus? What do you think I could do to change? Can you help me pray through that? And that's kind of knowing your bad press, we would call it. So knowing the stuff that makes you not like Jesus. And in community, we can become more like Jesus and feel like we aren't just doing it on our own. So be with Jesus, become like Jesus, and then we can do the things that he did. Doing the things he did comes from that overflow of devotion. It doesn't come because we're trying really hard. Doing the things that Jesus did is because we've been devoted, continually adhered to, being with him, devoted to becoming more like him. And that is then how we start to do the things he did. And we have some amazing stories in this church of people doing the things that Jesus did. We've heard lots of amazing stories of people receiving healing, people offering forgiveness to people, being generous with their money, choosing to encourage not to break down, people who are giving sacrificially rather than it being something that you do on your own or for yourself. We have had lots of examples here of people doing the things that Jesus does, and we can continue to do that. But it doesn't just come from striving. I'm going to say it again. It comes from this place of devotion. So let's devote ourselves to doing the stuff Jesus did, and then we can help one another to do the same. And that is one of the fun parts of Sunday, is sharing the good news stories, hearing what people have been doing, and encouraging one another. And that's what's so special when we pray for one another at the front, at the end of the service, is we can encourage one another to keep on going. Keep on going. That is the point of Sundays, is this moment to really encourage one another and build one another up in faith. So finally, what is going to happen if we actually start to do this? And this is a value for our church. It's something we're going to keep working on. We're not going to kind of not keep talking about this. This is something that we really want to be of high value here at St. Peter's. Well, we just need to look at the early church to see how amazing the results are of that devoted, constant affection to Jesus. They were filled with the awe of God, with many signs of wonders, verse 42. Everything that they used to be important, ceased to be central, used to be important. They gave themselves radically to each other by selling their possessions and having everything in common, verse 44. They gave freely and easily to anyone in need, verse 45. Their hearts were filled with joy and gladness, verse 46. They enjoyed the favor from all people, verse 47. And then we're told that God added daily to their number those who were being saved. Amazing. So it was better for them to be devoted, and it was better for the kingdom. And I believe that we can experience that here at St. Peter's as well, as we devote ourselves to Jesus every day, in the easy and the difficult moments, and not make it all about Sunday, although it is really good to come on Sunday. And if you're watching on YouTube and haven't come back yet, you're very welcome to come back. But why don't we respond? I don't know if Lucy or the band are around. I just wanted to sing that song again. Why don't we stand together?